We're gonna witness the mighty power of the Dark King Imu, an evil god being with powers unlike anyone else in One Piece who has now unexpectedly arrived on Elbaf. Luffy's new dawn is at risk of being eclipsed once again because in the first world, Nika failed to stop them, in the second, Joy Boy fell short, and now with this dramatic entrance at the end of chapter 1149, Imu has started basically the Third World War of One Piece. And I just have one real question, dude. What the hell is even happening? Alright, I thought that my man Scorpa was just about to lay total waste to the Holy Knights and Summers was just gonna step it up and become a real threat. But so far it looks like I was kind of right in calling out the weird strength gap between these godly warriors and Luffy, Loki, and Scorpa because our heroes here are still pretty busted after all, and so Imu themselves had to now step in and intervene. And as we see in this epic panel right here, Imu has taken over Gunko's body and is really pissed. And I do want to take this chance to go over exactly what Imu is going to be capable of, why I think that Imu is doing this right now, and how it's going to absolutely change the direction of the entire series. I mean, Elbaf will fall, and Luffy's role as the Sun God and Warrior of Liberation will be humanity's last hope. But don't worry, I'll tell you everything there is to know and how big of a deal all of this really is. Starting with Imu's crazy powers. Now, in this chapter, we get the chance to witness something that has been theorized for a very long time, but we've never really seen, which is Imu's dark possession. Imu has, at the very least, the ability to override Gunko's mind and take full control of her body. Now, my personal guess is that the Abyss is most likely how this is all happening, especially because we've seen Gunko actively use it the most. We do know, for instance, that her arrows have appeared from the shadowy flames of the Abyss powers, and that she's the one who summoned Summers and killing him to begin with. Gunko has the deepest ties to this shadowy hell power, and while all of the Holy Knights probably can do the same or similar stuff, so far the only thing that we do know for sure is that they do share these regeneration powers from it. That's all. But we do want to talk more about Imu here, and considering that Imu also unleashed what appears to be some insane Conqueror's Haki from Gunko's body, Imu themselves is very clearly on a whole different level. Shanks has used Wi-Fi Haki in the past, but Imu is using Wi-Fi Haki through another person, like a Wi-Fi extender, or maybe it's more accurate to call it a modem Haki. Now, actually, I have no idea if Imu is amping up Gunko's own existing willpower, or if Imu can just quite literally push their own will through a pre-established vessel from that far away. But whatever they're doing here, it is something we have legitimately not seen in the story before, and I just want to remind you, we might, not confirmed, but might be looking at the single most powerful being in the entire story. And I want to really delve into this possession here because it seems like it may be an extremely important part of Imu's toolkit. First off, it does really seem to boost the credibility of a lot of theories. I mean, one is the idea that Imu's silhouette body has been hidden for so long because they are actually possessing the body of a key character from the hidden past. Which, don't worry, we're of course gonna discuss in a little bit later as well after I touch on some of the other things that we need to get out of the way here first. For example, it also boosts the idea that every major villain in the series, from Crocodile to Kaido, has had some sort of tie-in or foreshadowing to Imu's true power too. Take Crocodile. He foreshadowed Imu's desire to use an ancient weapon to dominate and take over the world. Or Kaido, who alluded to the despair of Joy Boy and his attack, Conqueror of Three Worlds, Ragnarok, which seemed to directly imply here that Imu's role as the person who conquered the first, second, and now third world is what's really going on here. And now in this new possession situation, Imu seems to have a tie to Gecko Moria, who also used shadow possession to overtake people's minds. Now, Gecko Moria's ability is of course clearly different as he uses shadows from his devil fruit to accomplish this, but does show another major villain use possession as a power. And of course we have people like Doflamingo, don't forget that. I also find it particularly interesting here since Kuma really hits the stage during that arc, creating an interesting parallel between the man who foreshadowed Nika and a possession villain who foreshadowed Imu. And that one is especially interesting only due to the fact that Brook also appeared in the Thriller Bark arc and suddenly now is a key point of focus of Gunko's past according to this chapter too. I personally think that there's actually way more that we can dig into with this entire Thriller Bark, Gunko, and Brook parallel stuff in a different video, but for now I do want to also cover all of the similarities between Imu and, yes, we're going to talk about it, Mihawk Mihawk, because now that we've seen Imu's eyes appear in Gunko when she's possessed, it does raise even more questions about Mihawk and Imu's identical eyes too. And yes, don't worry, I am gonna talk about who Imu is mainly possessing right now in like 1 or 2 minutes. I promise, we'll get there. Okay, maybe you aren't as locked in on characters' eyes like I am. I've got a sort of thing for anime eyes. Well, look at these two guys side by side. This is Mihawk, this is Imu. Pretty interesting, right? Well, guess what? I lied. Liar Mano here, and I strike hard. I actually flipped these two. These are Mihawks and these are Emus, but there is a good chance that I fooled you because they do look so freaking similar. And now let's just put Gunko's possessed eyes up here as well, and yeah, all three of these are basically peas in a pot. So this raises the main question, is Mihawk also a vessel for Imu? And well, the answer is maybe. I actually wouldn't immediately write this idea off. I at least think there is a decent chance that Imu can possess Mihawk if he wants at some point and isn't actively doing so at all times. I also think it's quite likely that based on how he dresses, presents himself, and his epic powers, Mihawk was a former celestial dragon just like Shanks. Possibly even reaching the rank of a holy knight in training, explaining his insane powers today. Now, I have talked about this idea many times, and actually in this video specifically, I cover a ton of stuff to do with it, such as Mihawk's clan name Dracul, meaning son of the dragon, as in son of the celestial dragon, you know, stuff like that, but also that he could be a descendant of the Nerona family itself, and that's why Imu and he share similar eyes. Not to mention that both of these characters just happen to live alone inside of giant castles hidden away from society, so there are some pretty big parallels, and we're not even gonna talk about the sword looking like the throne in Marijo and all these things. Anyways, Oda wants us to notice some sort of connection between Imu and between Mihawk, and considering that they both have insane power, I wouldn't be that surprised if we find out that Shanks and Mihawk are so close because they did share a similar homeland and hatred of that home. Alright, with that, enough teasing. I've covered Imu's baseline powers and the theories that are getting boosted, so let's now really dive into this entire possession scenario. If you take a look at most of my Imu thumbnails in the past, you will have probably noticed that I've always been on the side of Imu possessing Nefertari di Lily. I've said tons of things like Imu was in love with Lily, or Imu possessed Lily to get back at Joy Boy, and all of these things, or one of these, could still be true, but that is not the biggest point that 1149 here really makes me think about. What really catches my eye in this chapter is the fact that Imu can and is shown to possess people confirmed, and it's no longer just some theoretical speculation that Imu may be able to do this. The current god king of this world is able to take over people's bodies, and so I do think it's very likely that Imu is currently possessing a body of some historical figure and not their own real body. Lily is just the one I think makes the most sense, considering that Imu has a real weird fascination and obsession with looking at pictures of Lily and Vivi, but I do think I may have unraveled a slightly crazier idea because of this too. You see, I did make a video about an idea that talks about how Imu may have consumed or possessed Nika's original body, which is another reason that they could be hidden. Remember, Luffy in Gear 5 has very similar eyes too, but I am starting to think that all of these options may just be true at the same time, and that Imu has just been hopping from body to body to body every 1,000 years or so, and now Vivi is next up on the chopping block in order to be possessed. And it does make a lot more sense when you consider the real-life queen of Egypt, Nefertiti, was a prominent center of the cult of the sun god Ra. Now, there's a really fun case to be made that Nika's full name was Nefertari Nika, and that Lily and Vivi are his literal descendants, and that's why Imu is now possessing them. But hey, that's just a theory so far, a One Piece theory. Something I do want to point out though is that Imu specifically is possessing Gunko very clearly for a reason. It's not random. I feel like we all agree on that. And since Gunko was most likely in the throne room when Cobra died, as seen by a dark arrow that 100% looks like hers being what killed him, why Gunko? Why not possess Summers or Killingham or Shamrock? I don't know. Well, it could be as simple as Summers was cut into pieces by Scopper Gaban and Killingham needed to maintain the dream demons that he created, so Gunko was the easiest choice because she wasn't doing anything, but I think it may be way more specific than just that. Imu may be possessing Gunko because they can only possess women, or they only choose to possess women because Imu themselves might have originally be a woman. Now, do note that this is a totally baseless idea that I personally really like, but I do want to call it out because it would also make a ton of sense with all the Imu controls Lily and will want to control Vivi idea too. And that Gunko, Imu's vessel, is the only woman that we see being part of the Holy Knights roster so far at least. Alright, right. So Imu is incredibly powerful, we do know that, and there is a lot to go over with what and why they might be possessing Gunko, but I do think that there is another big question that needs to be answered from this chapter. Why does Imu need the Holy Knights in general at all? What's the point? Like, you're telling me this entire time that Imu can just send that vessel out onto the ocean, possess them, and then use their body as a vessel for their divine power, and then for some reason they send Summers to deal with things? Like, what the hell? Why would you do that, Imu? Now, in all fairness, it's probably because they can't possess them and use their full power at the same time. It's very likely that Gunko's body won't be able to withstand 100% of Imu's full power and haki, and we'll just get a small taste of what Imu is truly capable of here on Elbaf. Otherwise, I mean, it would probably just end the story, right? And considering that it's looking very likely that it's gonna be absolutely insane what's gonna happen next, I want to ask another question. Why the heck does Imu need to stay hidden in the Holy Land? What's the point of that? And when you really think about it, to me that's even the more important question here, because Imu's super secret lifestyle has now been revealed to be known by all of the Holy Knights on top of the Gorosei as well. Now personally, I was very surprised. I think that's pretty wild, as it does mean that there are some loudmouth idiots like Summers here walking around who just straight up know Imu's existence, but at the same time, they probably have to know about Imu's powers too in order to use the Abyss to begin with. However, I do think I have the correct answer for why the Holy Knights have to be a thing, and it's actually one of two things, I would say. The first idea is that Imu can in fact possess any single one of them, and they are all chosen to be different vessels for Imu. Now we will see, of course, I think, if Imu ends up taking over someone like Shamrock, killing him, or Summers at some point in the story, and if that were to happen, I feel very confident in saying that this is a major factor for them even existing in the first place. But regardless of if it's only Gunko or all of them that can be possessed, it does point towards the second reason, the idea that Imu can not leave Morijoa themselves, and even more specifically, I personally don't think they can even leave Pangaea Castle. I don't know about you, but to me it looks like it's very likely that the essence of Imu, whatever that be, their haki or the Abyss or whatever it might be that actually is their core, is in some weird way nerfed and tied to that space of Pangaea. But I also think that the Eve Tree might be another likely culprit, and for the sake of my theory here, you could probably use them like very much interchangeably. Because this prison situation would sort of explain why the Holy Knights need to exist, you know, kind of enacting Imu's will, because they themselves literally cannot move anywhere. But maybe through the Abyss, Imu is then able to grant them powers and mark them as vessels to briefly leave the castle for short moments. I think it also explains why Imu needs them to return to the Holy Land as soon as possible, because they have taken too long, and it seems like the winds of change have finally arrived, as it sounds like Monkey D. Dragon is now finally assaulting Morijoa. And if Imu's existence is tied to the castle, well, the Holy Knights need to come back now and defend them from the Revolutionary Army. And I think that all of this also explains the very odd room in the castle, which is the Flower Garden. I mean, we do know that Imu loves this room and that it is nothing like the rest of Morijoa altogether. It's beautiful, full of flowers, trees, and water. It's a beautiful garden, a pocket of earth up on top of the red line. And you know, honestly, if I personally was trapped or had my shadowy spirit bound to a heavenly castle, I'd probably also yearn to be in the room that reminds me of the surface and, you know, what it's like to live in nature more than anything. But how? How did this even happen to Imu if that's the case? Ding, 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 ding! It's Joy Boy. Yeah, it's always Joy Boy. I think it's super clear that Joy Boy must have done something to seal Imu successfully away inside the castle. You know, as a sort of last-ditch effort to cut down their immense power, or at least limit them, and even if they aren't bound to the grounds of Pangaea itself, I do think that Joy Boy used his divine haki or some other power to at least heavily injure or fragment Imu's power in some way. Think Voldemort, and they have been hiding up here, recovering hovering, looking for a way to, regain their power for over 800 years now. Waiting until they finally regain all their strength, so it's great enough to overtake the world and kick off Ragnarok, the end of the third One Piece world. And this would actually form a really cool connection, or at least allusion, to some other epic fantasy villains like the dwarf in the flask from the fantastic show Full Metal Alchemist, or again, even a character like Voldemort. Super powerful dark beings that had some of their power taken away or limited by an even more powerful rival of theirs from the past, and then after taking down that other person, were just kind of waiting and plotting to regain their full strength at some point in the future. Please let me know what you think about that in the comments, but I'm definitely getting the vibe that these vessels and possessions of Imu are a necessity more than a choice and show of power. And it's because during the Void Century, they were probably so strong, too strong to be defeated, and thus the solution was kind of suicide bombing, like Joy Boy doing something weird and just trying to limit their strength instead so they couldn't use their full power for a good and reasonable amount of time. Now, with that in mind, the entire reason that the poneglyphs in Laugh Tales exist now makes way better sense too, because Joy Boy failed to save Fishman Island, he failed to defeat Imu, and he failed to save the second world of One Piece altogether. And so alongside his companions, people like Lily and, the Kozuki clan, he then created a guiding map for his successor. That way, eventually someone could learn from his mistakes and have a baseline for actually defeating Imu for good this time. And I do think actually that this is how Scopper would know how to counter the Abyss, because he probably read about it straight up on Laugh Tale when they found the One Piece. Now, if this is the true story, then Imu possessing Lily as their own last-ditch screw you move to Joy Boy would make sense too, because if I was a big evil villain person and you stopped my plan, I'd probably do something messed up to get some revenge too, right? Possessing a love interest does seem a little bit extreme, but I mean, go off, Imu, do the evil stuff. Now, regardless of all that, what I should also talk with you about is what is coming next. What is about to happen now thanks to Imu's insane Gunko possession. Because we can all agree, Imu here looks mad and literally says that they're about to show the Straw Hats a god's true power, and what in the world does that even mean? Now, a very safe answer would be that Imu could use their dark god level hockey lightning to burn down the Atom Tree. I mean, we've been told numerous times in this arc that lightning is the tree's greatest weakness, and we do know the Abyss Lightning has already set a massive branch on fire before. So I think there's a fairly high chance that all of this crazy black lightning surrounding Gunko's body is about to be used against the Great Treasure Tree, burning Elbaf to the ground like it's Ohara 2.0. No, not that Ohara. Nope, no, not that Ohara either. I just did a podcast with him. We're cool. I meant this Ohara. All right. Now the editor is just getting cheeky. I'm watching you. Okay. Now I do think it's also very likely that Luffy and Loki are about to get absolutely low diffed by Imu's dark powers in the next 3 to 4 chapters too. Because let's face the facts, Copacabana is falling down into the underworld, and basic Oda storytelling points to him conveniently falling right into the hands of Zoro, Sanji, Luffy, and Loki, unless it does look like Chopper is also jumping to save him, so like maybe he'll make it in time. But then they would go up to the mainland and Imu would body them, or it'll just be too late and Elbaf will already be completely on fire. But I do think, and I do want to have Luffy and Loki stand against Imu here, framing them as two sun gods ready to take on the evil shadow god. Or more likely, Luffy will rise above and prove to Elbaf and Loki that he is the true sun god. Let's face it, these two already teaming up would also work really nicely, because Robin and Frankie could point out the Harley and the mural symbolism of these two, like, it just fitting so well. And looking at the left side of the mural again, we can see what appears to be Joy Boy and an ancient giant here leading the charge, Luffy and Loki, very clearly the next two in line to do the very same thing. And Imu's impatience here may prove to be their downfall, as seeing Luffy and Loki team up to fight Imu could be what actually the giants need to now fully rally behind Loki and Luffy instead of Imu once and for all, uniting this war-torn nation and destroying Imu's plans of getting all the giants on their side for the final war, which we do know is their main goal here based on Gunko's line in chapter 1147. I will admit though, I do have a little bit of a sneaky gut feeling that I can't shake, and I hate to say it, but it's also somewhat possible that Imu might kidnap Nico Robin here, man. Like, let's look at it. She's captured and tied up very conveniently conveniently right here. She is Luffy's only way of deciphering the poneglyphs and making it to Laugh Tale, which presumably needs to be done to defeat Imu. And if Imu's smart, which not sure about that, but you'll think that, you know, they should just yoink Robin through the abyss and keep her tied up in Marijua. But I don't actually know if that's possible, considering that they were leading the kids around, you know, by force to boats because they clearly couldn't take them straight through the magic circles back to Marijua. So maybe instead Robin will end up getting a sick tattoo this arc first and then get kidnapped. It would kind of match her Demon of Ohara vibes, you know, goth baddie thing that she's got going on. I mean, I don't want to see that, okay? Stop. All right. With Imu's potential next steps covered, honestly, I do want to keep running with this dark and depressing reality though, because either way, it is looking grim for the crew at this point. Most of them are captured by the Celestial Dragons, Elbaf is on fire, the library is on fire, and is likely to suffer even more, and the one and only man so far who we know is able to stop anything, Scopper, has been stabbed and defeated and is falling into the underworld. Unless Luffy and Loki appear next chapter, things are not really looking good for them. I mean, I've been saying this for a few weeks now, but I am getting some very serious Sabaody vibes from Elbaf recently. Just look at it on paper. The Straw Hats have come face to face with an unbelievably powerful ability that they have no means of defeating. I mean, back then it was the crazy Logia powers of Kizaru and any other Logia fruit user, but now it's the Abyss Regeneration and Imu themselves that only Scopper seems to know how to deal with. One of the Roger pirates, once again, has done their best to defend them and hold off the threat, but they were not enough. In Sabaody it was Rayleigh, and now it is Scopper. And so to finish off the parallels, the Straw Hats would have to forcibly be separated, kicking Luffy into a fear and despair, which is looking more and more likely since most of them have already been tapped by the Holy Knights. So in my books at least, the odds that the crew is forcibly being separated from Luffy once again is feeling really high at this point. I just am getting a really sneaky suspicion that Oda is using Elbaf to kick off the next back Marineford style conflict. This is Sabaody. An Impel Down like prison break is about to occur too, and then a big raid against the Holy Land or another prominent area would happen too. Because yes, in case you forgot, Marco is about to raid Impel Down to free Weevil and his friends, and it's a pretty big factor we haven't been addressing too much either, but it really fits in nicely with all of these pre-time skip similarities. In fact, it could be Dragon's assault on Marijua right now that Luffy ends up joining to try and save the crew, or it could be something to do with Blackbeard and Garp. I mean, I personally just cannot shake the gut feeling that the next Summit War is very fast approaching, and after an important character dies, a final time skip would be the logical next step for Luffy to finally learn how to deal with Imu, the Holy Knights, and the Goroseis immortality and regeneration, which he just can do nothing about right now, just how he needed to learn Haki. Though I will say I do think it's likely that this time Zoro and Sanji would be at Luffy's side, and heck, I mean, he may even have another big new ally going into it that helps shift the tides, because Loki might be there too. Knowing that Scopper Gaban is very likely to fall right into their hands, I find it very possible that they'll nurse him back to health, and then by the time that they get back to the Heaven Realm, the crew will be gone. Scopper is at the center of everything, and if you want to know more about why and how he will save the crew and why the next time skip will change everything that, you know, we thought would be happening in the story, please check out my video about that right here. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much to all of our Patreons. I forgot to put a plug in it, but if you want to support the channel, we have so much cool stuff going on there, and if you just want to join for free, we have a free weekly newsletter on top of it where you just get to learn everything there is to know about One Piece. All right.